and welcome to Join the Discussion. Thanks for coming back with us this season. My name is Madelene Francese. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Development for Heber Senior Care, and I'll be your host. Before I introduce my guest, I do want to remind our audience that if you have a suggested guest or topic you'd like us to explore, please email me at jointhediscussion@heberseniorcare.org. Thanks a lot. I look forward to hearing from you. Tonight's guest is Denise Jones, the new Executive Director at Hoffman SummerWood. Denise comes to SummerWood with extensive experience, having been the Executive Director of 3 assisted living facilities. She is a BSN, Bachelor of Science of Nursing, and her expertise is geriatric mental health, staff education, and I look forward to asking her so many questions about assisted living. Thanks for joining us tonight, Denise, and being our first guest of the season.
Well, thank you, Madeline. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome. Did you have a good summer? I can't believe we're back in the fall.
I did. And now we're stuck with winter weather already.
Which is a good reason to talk about assisted living.
Yeah.
So before we get into all the nitty-gritty, what's a definition of assisted living? Because I think about it now, there are assisted livings virtually everywhere. I mean, I don't know what the statistic is, but it seems like in the state, there are probably 80 to 100 assisted livings. To me, it translates to living with assistance, but that's no different than maybe being at home with home care or being in long-term care. So let's start with, how do you know you need assisted living as your choice?
Assisted living, the word assist in assisted living is very important. And I find that it's easily confused by a lot of laypersons and medical personnel alike. And what I love about assisted living and the assisted living is that we want to provide supervision, assistance, care, safety, health, wellness, and dignity to the residents that live there to keep them healthy and well as long as possible. We don't want to invade their space, but we want to support them and the family members for them to enjoy living there. Our goal is to provide all that and to avoid maybe the next step, which would be, long-term care. And if you come in sooner than later, that's really when you have the most choice and the most control of your future of your assisted living choice.
So I know that's one of my last questions, but I think the audience is familiar with me bouncing around a little bit. So you really can age in place, or is assisted living a stop along the journey?
Assisted living is definitely a place where you can age in place, and it's really up to the person coming in and their family members and what they would like to see happen. And it's so individual and so unique to each person. Mm-hmm. The service that we would provide is helping them make those choices as they go. It's a very intimate decision and a very important one that we love to be a part of.
Well, let's get right to, it's a very intimate and personal decision, because I know you live in your home, you spend your whole life paying off your mortgage, you raise your children there, you have your memories there. It would take a lot to get you to leave. It would take a lot to get me to leave. And I know my husband has said to me many times, I ain't going anywhere. So I'm going to assume, what are the triggers that make a family or a couple broach the question with each other or their children that we may need to look at an alternative arrangement for living? What's the quiz going on in your mind?
Well, I think it's a process. I think that the quiz you're talking about is a process and how you feel. And although your home environment is very safe and you know it well, I think what happens is they start to feel that they're not as safe as they once were, maybe a little unsteady on their feet. They can't manage, even if it's one floor, with ease and strength as they used to. And the family members also start to notice that. And then what starts happening is that, family members go home and they're worried around the clock.
Right.
Because they don't want to pull family members out quickly and they want them to be part of the process, but how do you do that? How can we prevent an emergent situation from happening and keep them safe? And what you'll find is that the expense of doing that continues to rise, even though that you've paid off your mortgage. And that's when assisted living becomes critical to look at that, because it's not as expensive as having caregivers around the clock. And it's not as expensive if you're home paying for all the taxes and you kind of come in and you have all that supervision and assistance that's built in. It's part of being in assisted living.
So if you're an adult child with parents, and you find that you're calling them more frequently. You now have their neighbors on speed dial. You don't go to bed comfortably without saying, you know what, let me just make sure mom took that pill and then I'll be to bed. Is that a sign for an adult child to say, even though mom and dad haven't brought it up, maybe I should bring it up? Who brings it up? Or
it comes in a lot of forms, but mostly from the family member. The adult children, it could be someone close by, it could be a good friend if they don't have kids.
And they notice this change and they need
notice
advice.
the change. And chances are the person themselves also recognizes it, but of course it's better if someone can assist and redirect them and guide them, because it takes a lot of care. It's something that I take a lot of honor in that. If someone comes to me for help and guidance, because it's a process. I would never meet someone and say, yep, you got to move in tomorrow. But I would certainly sit down, hear what they're doing at home, guide them if there's anything we can do to keep them there. Of course, I would try to advise that. But of course, help them move in and understand what the process is. It takes a lot of thought, and you want to get ahead of those accidents that can happen that can remove that option altogether.
Exactly. So people should try and look at assisted living as camp. You don't have any of the worries anymore, and you get to live more of your life. Correct?
Yes, they
can. Is that the goal of assisted living that you take on? And let's get on to exactly assisted living. Let's get down to the real skinny first, and then we can go backwards about finances. So what can they bring with them to assisted living? Can they be denied, first of all, I guess? Let me ask that.
You can be denied if you're too far for what we can provide.
Okay, so that would mean you may need skilled nursing or long-term
a lot
care.
more skilled nursing. That we have to believe that the person's able to navigate throughout the building with queuing and assistance.
So it doesn't mean just because you have a walker or you use a cane that you can't go to assisted living.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a full assessment that we would, from point of entry.
Oh, okay. So you would come out and assess the client first.
We can assess them at home, or they can come in for a tour. They can have lunch with us. But we're kind of looking at them as soon as they come in, because you would never want to, sell it to somebody who couldn't come in. That wouldn't be right.
Do all assisted livings assess first? So is that your?
They do.
So
yes, they do.
That's like your college application.
Correct.
Someone comes to your home. You say, I'm interested in maybe assisted living. And you determine if it's the right service fit.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
Do all assisted livings have the same things?
As for the assessment?
Well, as far as how do you choose? I mean, what are we comparing here? It's like college.
Yeah.
You all have dining rooms. You all have regulations. Are you all background checked? I mean, are they all the same on certain levels, but then some of them are different and divert? I mean, talk about how do you compare? And maybe using Hoffman SummerWood is one example. What's another example?
Yep. So in assisted living, I've looked at a lot, and I've seen a lot in our colleagues, and I've listened to a lot of families and people searching throughout the years of my experience. And I like to consider myself an advocate for them to make the right choice. So I have nursing eyes and clinical eyes, so no different than going to a college campus if you were a student. When I look for a family member, every person that comes in to me is a potential family member for me. So what I say to them is you have to think about the services you're looking for. You have to look at the campus. If you were to go to a large hotel and you were to take an apartment in the furthest in the back and you asked for laundry or sheets, you could be waiting all day. And it's nobody's fault. Some folks like these big, large campuses, and they believe that that's what their family member is going to do well in. But you have to look at each person and see how much of they really going to utilize. What are we looking for? Are we looking for all of that? Or are we looking for a nice, intimate place that feels like a home, because that's what we sell, that they can get the care and live with dignity, which is what I love about Hoffman SummerWood. Hoffman SummerWood is not part of a large chain. Therefore, you have accessibility to administration when you have any questions. You get all your needs met.
And they're made on, you make these calls, your staff make these calls.
Yes, and we're always willing to adjust and change to each individual's need on a personal level. That's the service and the assistance, I think, that gets lost, especially in the bigger facilities, but to each their own. But that's why I love Hoffman SummerWood. because we can do that and we can do it well.
So let's talk about what can mom and dad expect, the real skinny for a typical day if you're moving in. So what can you bring with you? How big are the rooms? I mean, are you going from a house to a small little college dorm?
Yep.
That's the feeling. But are you?
Yep, you are going to a facility, or it's really housing. You're signing a lease, and you're moving in, and you're going to pick an apartment, 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, and they're all different in
Oh, so you have 2
sizes.
bedrooms.
Yeah. They all have different views and different locations, so it's really what the person's trying to look for, just like you would if you were going to lease a condo or an apartment. And we would help pick things to come. We always suggest bringing your favorite things, the things that are closest to you, things that you can enjoy your day with, dining or seating, your favorite place to read where you would set it up in the apartment, all your needs to get through your day, pictures, family mementos, it's all very important. We'd help measure, kind of guide you, and you want to set it up so that it's safe. That's the difference between home and going to assisted living. It's nice to bring everything, but you want to bring those things so that you can move around, whether you have an assistive device, safely.
So you would comment. So if someone said, I love this throw rug and I'm bringing it, and you saw it as a risk, you wouldn't say they can't, but you'd say, you know what, for your own safety, this is what we would recommend?
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely. And that helps in designing the floor plan. It's as simple as where maybe the seat looks good here, but we can position it a little differently so that you can get around with your walker or your wheelchair. Little things like that go a long way when you're transitioning.
Yeah, because, to try and pare down your life, right? Which is how it must feel a little bit. When people move in to assisted living facilities, I mean, obviously they're welcomed. But again, I go back to first day of school, who am I eating lunch with? How are they welcomed? How are they integrated into this social community?
It takes time. That's the thing to remember. It takes time. And as we get to know someone coming in, so even before they move in, we know them because we're spending so much time with them making the decision that we'd probably try to line them up with like residents there.
Okay.
And pair them at lunch, or maybe suggest an apartment close to someone that's like, that they'd have similar interests and backgrounds and education, personality. Because they live there, we do get to know them. We also have the staff. The staff comes up, greets themselves, each manager, and we do it throughout 2 to 3 weeks because it's so overwhelming.
It is.
When you come in, every manager's meeting with you, but how are you going to remember that? So we take time to go back and circle back throughout the next month to make sure they know who's who, but on top of that, to welcome them and to show them how to navigate throughout the facility. Really, we spend a lot of time. Someone could take up to 3-4 months to get used to it. Well, we'll take the time to spend that time to show them how to get around and how to integrate into the community.
If they choose to stay in their room, personal choice still rules?
They can.
I mean, or does that concern you with your nursing background? How do you decide someone's moved into assisted living because they're isolated, but now they're in a big, they're in an assisted living facility, but they're in their room all day. Aren't they isolated?
Well, the wonderful thing about that is because it's an assisted living facility, but it is their home and they sign a lease to live there, is that usually they identify themselves. I find that those members come in and residents and say, I typically don't like to come out and I like to have my private space.
So they share it.
And I think that's important because we certainly don't want people coming in more frequently than they would like, and we don't want to, force them to go to activities.
Right.
We do,
like swimming at 8 in the morning when it's cold at camp.
Yeah, we like to expose them to what's going on and let them pick as they need. And then the other piece is finding out maybe there's something we don't offer that they do like to do. So maybe how can we integrate that into the community? So there's some things that someone who likes to normally be private may come out for a few things. We can always change what we offer.
Okay, well that's nice to hear. So a typical day, you wake up anytime you want. I mean, one of the first things I think about when I think about retirement is, oh gosh, I don't have to get up at 6 o'clock. 8 seems like a late morning to me. Can you sleep till 10 if you choose? Or is it regimented to the point of breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you have to, I know some assisted livings, the dining room's open all day. Some have scheduled blocks of time. How does it work? What are the options? How much flexibility do you have with your day?
It really entirely is up to each person because they have a full kitchen,
Oh, okay.
so they can make their own breakfast.
Is that
I
by
find
regulation? Do all assisted livings provide a kitchen? Do you know? Or is it?
I think it depends. Some have a stove, some do not. I think you have to look very carefully at that when you're shopping to see what each one has.
Okay.
And what the meal times are. I think that's, you definitely have to look at that. But for us at Hoffman SummerWood, we have the full kitchens. And a lot of residents don't like to get up for breakfast. So often they do like to make their own toast. They like to read the newspaper.
Right.
It's entirely up to them. Some come down for dinner. Some want a light dinner.
So you can have toast in your
really-
room
they
and
can-
double dip and then come to breakfast once you're up for it.
Correct, yes.
See, I'm just thinking ahead. I'm going to be the problem child at assisted living. I'll warn you already. How do they get to their appointments? Do they have their car? Can they?
You can bring your car if you'd like to bring your car. You can, and if you don't have a car, a lot of folks find out that they give up their licenses freely, and some like to continue to drive. It's really, I feel like it's a personal decision that's well made.
Okay.
You know, by the individual. And we would, in the winter, if you brought your car, we take care of your car. We move the snow. We take,
Even if I
uncover
don't
it.
live there, will you do that?
Yeah, you can bring yours over anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
so we
great.
do that, but we have our transportation system.
How does
and
that work?
we have the staff, and there's a couple of transportation staff inside.
Oh, that's great.
That would work with you, and depending if it's emergent or scheduled, we work with them to schedule that. And we can go into it's an 8-mile radius.
Is that true? Again, it's a regulation. Assisted livings do provide transportation to these appointments?
I think it's a service more than a
service?
regulation.
Okay.
And it's definitely something they should closely look at. There's multiple, if you don't have a car and you want to use alternative transportation outside of ours, there's ways we can help with that also. Family members often like to get involved as well due to the nature of maybe their mobility or cognition. So there's multiple ways to get to those appointments with a car or without a car, internally and externally,
So it's
to help
very
them.
important when you're looking at assisted livings that you understand what's provided, what's required, what's different and added on for your specific assisted living, because they are all going to be a nuance of difference, correct?
I always advise to get the
Yeah.
packages in the mail,
Compare, make
and
a
read
chart.
them very carefully, make a list of questions for each one, and ask the same question for each one to get the answers that you're looking for.
Okay, good to hear. How much does this typically cost? I hate to ask you a financial question, but I think the audience would probably, if you're watching this tonight, are thinking, well, what does this really entail? Is it more? Is it less? I know there's a range and you can't be specific, but can you give the audience a sense of what a monthly rent would cost in a variety of, in an assisted living? And then I want to add to that, what happens with, if they run out of money in assisted living. So if we could just talk a little bit about finances.
So there's two parts of charging to assisted living, and one is the rent for the apartment. Can range from anywhere, from $4,000, $4,500 up to $7,000. If there's a second occupant, it's usually half that's added on to the rent.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry, I've had this
that's
terrible
all
cough. Go ahead, please.
And then the second piece is the assisted living service piece, which is the number one reason on top of the socialization that people look to move in.
So what is that?
And
what is
those
assisted living services?
Assisted living services are based out of nursing services, and it's their own entity in the facility, but we would also educate the consumer on how to utilize it. And usually medication management is one of the top needs to come in, as well as bathing and dressing, which is the activities of daily living. Queuing and supervision, reminders to get to meals. And there's usually levels within each package, and they should be designed, each package, so that as you're aging in place, it's affordable but not cost prohibitive. And that's the difference. Is if you're home and you hire a private agency, you can spend up to $8,000 a month just for those assisted type living services at home.
Now you can come into assisted living and not need those, correct?
Absolutely, which is part of the process of aging in place. So, of course, you pay for just your overhead initially, but over time, it's like swimming in the pool. First, you dip your toes and you need a little bit of help. And as maybe you get a little older or something changes with your mobility, you need a little bit more health or safety. And we kind of work with you going down into those packages. But it's not cost prohibitive as it would be if you're home with private caregivers.
And do some of these medical providers, can they come to your facility? So if mom needs a podiatrist, if mom needs to see, a chiropractor, Do you have any of these things on site?
We do have those on site. We didn't before, but I'm bringing them in. I'm bringing an audiologist, a podiatrist, a medical physician. In addition to that, we're having less use of transportation because of that. So if there's emergency needs for transportation, it's more available.
So that's a wonderful option. So another good question to ask as you're touring, do you have medical services on site? Because that really is a big piece of, I would imagine, the stress for not only the older people, the seniors, but their children. How do I leave work, get mom to the doctor, get all my questions in, get her home and settled, get back to my job, and then of course get that call that says, wait, I was supposed to go to the pharmacy for what the doctor just prescribed. So what happens with medication? You take care of that as well? I'm thinking of moving in actually now.
So a lot of assisted livings have a pharmacy. We're going to be working with Woodmark Pharmacy, and that even though there's a pharmacy assisted living price, the whole point of the pharmacy is that it's a no-brainer. So the first thing you should get is sign up with the pharmacy because, you know, as you age, you have multiple comorbidities, multiple diagnoses. So even a cardiac doctor can change mom's meds 3 times in 1 week. The benefit of a pharmacy coming in and providing prepackaged medication is they'll come in 3 times that week, take out all the medication, adjust what the new medication dosing is.
So you have those pill packs basically.
The pill packs, correct, from the pharmacy versus filling in a med planner.
Oh boy,
the medication planners have a lot of room for error.
Right.
They could be knocked onto the floor. So even though if we're filling it or a family member's filling it and we're dispensing it to them, they have a lot of, to me, there's a lot of efforts that go into it that really don't help.
So it's like having your own concierge pharmacist.
Correct.
It really is.
Yep, and it's wonderful, even in a snowstorm. They'll come in there and they have to pull out those meds and change them so the family's not coming in and doing that.
No, that is huge because
is.
I remember when we lost power, you know, that huge storm for 8 days, and there were many people who lived in communities, and the community room had power because it had a generator, but none of the individual apartments did. And we were getting calls from children across the country about their parents because their insulin was in the refrigerator. That's something you could check off your list. I assume assisted livings have generators. They are your backup for all of that. So you don't really have to think about those life situations coming into play with your medication, which is a very big stressor for seniors.
The medication, we have the generators, but we also have refrigerators on site that are backed up on the generator. So if that came up and we had to move them, as well as oxygen, we have outlets for oxygen that go on the generator, so there's no worries. And of course we have, God willing, we don't ever want an evacuation or anything like that, but we have a lot of emergency planning internally to work with families based on what's happening, as well as emergency services to keep them safe.
You're not going to believe this, but we're coming to the end. We've got 5 minutes, and I've got a million questions. So I sound like a lot of children probably going, wait, I need more. Let me skip to the caregiver perspective. How am I going to know what's going on with my mom and dad? You know, are you going to communicate to me, or is it a HIPAA violation because you're communicating with my parents and they have to tell me? How am I going to know? Can I come into the assisted living and walk right by and knock on their apartment and enter with a key? Or, well, you know, how do I know what's going on now that they're under the care of an assisted living facility?
A couple of things. We always like to know who's coming and going in the building.
Okay.
It's just a safety procedure.
Absolutely.
So
Do you have security? Is it 24/7?
Yep.
The building? Okay.
Yep. We have 24 hours. There's someone on site with security. And we always like to know who's coming and going at all times for numerous reasons. But of course, family members have to be part of their care with their parent. When there's someone there without any family, it makes it harder for us to bridge all the gaps. We will do that, but it's much harder. So families are still much a part of their care and have definite access and need to any membership of the team and management or the direct caregivers to ask questions at all times.
That is good to know. What happens if your parents aren't happy? You chose, you think they're going to be, there's a transition period, but you don't see it. They're not settling well. Does that happen? And then what do you do?
It does happen, and it's by individual for different reasons that can happen, and it's very important for us to work closely with those members that are moved in and residents to find out what the triggers are, what's not helping with the transition. And then there's multiple things that we can do to assist them to try to get more comfortable or make them happier. I mean, there's so many reasons it can happen. I could talk all day.
Yeah, I know. I am like, oh my God. A staff are background checked?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and how about turnover? I mean, I would imagine a lot of the staff get connected to the residents or the family members, and for some reason I'm going to guess the turnover is lower in assisted living maybe. Is that true?
I think it's a good question to ask when you shop. You need to look at that when you're shopping. Hoffman SummerWood does not have big turnover. There's people who've been working there for many, many years since it opened and are so dedicated and loyal.
Do you think it's because they love the place, they love the residents, or?
I think it's both. And you know, it's twofold. You have to love what you're doing. You have to love the atmosphere and the company you work for. And when you take care of the staff take care of what they're there to do, which is take care of family members. So I think it goes up and down the food chain on that. And I think it's a very important to ask in assisted living when you're shopping.
Yeah, because if your staff are turning over, then there's a different...
Especially in the management level.
Right, good point, good point. I think we're coming down to the last minute or two. Let me look through my questions. What about the children feeling guilt? So the parents move in and they're having a ball, but the kids feel, I shouldn't have done that, or maybe mom's not calling me as much as she used to. I'm feeling left out of this. Does that happen, that you have to talk to the children of the parents, the adult children, or are they relieved generally that their parents are happy?
Well, that's a fun question because we'll see them thriving and doing well and having a great time. But of course, it's a family relationship, and they'll tell their children that it's, you know, this is terrible. And then they'll ask us, oh my God, they're not doing well and they don't like it, it's not working. And guess what? They're having a great time. This is where you get to relax and go home and know that they're in good care.
So it's like kids at camp again, back to the analogy.
It goes back to that.
Mom, I don't really like it here, but then when you hang up, you're like, hold on, I'll be there.
Yeah, and that's always the safest place to express how they feel about the underlying change, and that's okay. That's what they're there for.
And still, if children are getting that answer, they should call you, call your team, and say, I think mom and dad are fine, but this is what she's saying or he's saying to me, so I want to confirm.
We always want to hear from the families all the time, no matter what it is, because we want to make it a wonderful place for them to live. So
we are coming down to the last, I think, 40 seconds. I think it's important for people to know that you have to visit. So if you are listening to this show, or you know somebody who may need or want assisted living, or you're just curious, come tour them. Go to all of them. Call Denise Jones at Hoffman SummerWood. You don't even have to call. You can just stop in, have a tour, have some lunch, have dinner, see what it is you need to learn. Is it possible for kids to come ahead of time? Parents aren't ready, but I need to get my stuff, my education. So they can call you.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we're there for.
Okay, that is terrific. And again, if you have questions about assisted living specifically, you can also email those questions to join the discussion at HebrewSeniorCare.org, and we will find out your answers. I want to thank you for joining us again tonight. I hope you learned a little bit. I hope you enjoyed your time with us. And if you would like to suggest a guest or another topic for this season, please again email me at joindiscussion@HebrewSeniorCare.org. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and you have a wonderful, safe evening.